In just over 2 weeks' time, I'm entering a painting competition being held at Element Games in their Northwest Gaming Centre, not far from me in Stockport. I've never entered a painting competition before, and I thought it would be a really great chance to make some fun content, but also to get some meaningful critique from professionals and experts who know better than me what they're actually doing. Not to mention the guest judging the event is the one and only Duncan Rhodes. So the pressure is on to produce something good and to produce something that is representative of what I'm capable of if I push myself. So for the next 4 weeks, including today, this is what is going to be taking over the channel. If you watched any of my content, you know that I'm big into kit bashes. So today we're going to do a kit bash. Next week, we'll do the basing. The week after that, we'll do the painting. And the week after that, the event will have happened. So it'll just be time for a little bit of reflection on how I found it, what I would change, yada, 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 all that sort of stuff. So because I had this particular kit bash planned anyway, I've been really on a Dark Angels streak at the moment. I'm having a great time painting them. And you guys seem to enjoy the Dark Angel that we put out 2 weeks ago. If you've not watched that yet, it's just up there. Because of all that, and because he was literally my favorite character from the Dark Angels when I was a kid, we're going to be doing Ezekiel. So like I said, today the process is going to be all about the kit bash, and I really hope that you enjoy the model, enjoy the work that I put into it, and enjoy the video.
So if you've never seen Ezekiel, this is his model. It has not been updated for longer than I think I've been alive.
Fine. I'll do it myself.
But nevertheless, I cherished this model as a kid. I've got 2 of them somewhere. I don't really know why. So to recreate this as faithfully as possible, I'm going to start, of course, with the Inner Circle companions. This particular companion is the one that I'm looking at just because the flow of his robe is the most similar to the original Ezekiel model, and therefore he's going to make the best base, I think, for how I want to make this work. From this companion, we're going to take the keys off his belt. That's literally it. And finally, this companion here, I'm going to be taking these particular arms because they're the perfect pose for the original sculpt. The sword as well has got the skull at the pommel, and the shape of the crossguard is more or less the same, again with the little skull icon on there. We're also using this particular hooded head because his left eye is bionic, which is the same eye as Ezekiel, so it's literally perfect. I'm going to be taking the helmet from a Blade Guard veteran and using the very front part to create the sort of mask that covers Ezekiel's face. And from this Phobos librarian, I'm going to be taking the little horn skull hanging around his neck. I'm going to be taking his sword, and I'm going to be taking the book that hangs off his hip at the back. Now that I'm in the editing stage and I'm looking at all of this, I really should have taken the keys from his hip and used those keys instead of the Inner Circle keys. But I used this librarian for a completely different video, and outside of editing this video, I'm so far along in the process already that finding these keys and putting them on my kit bash, which is, partly painted, it would just be a nightmare. So, we move, it's fine. This tiny book here from the new Dark Angels upgrade sprue is going to be used as well. I've got a back banner that I sourced from Spare Parts. I think it's from the old Dark Angels Company Veterans box. And then my friend Toby very kindly gave me this book with the sword through it from the Terminators of the Grey Knights. I'm using that to go at the top of Ezekiel's back banner. So the first thing I'm going to do is assemble the Inner Circle companion, the one in particular that is going to be the base of our entire model. Another good thing about this model is that the pistol on the hip is on the right hip, the same as the old model. Looking at this little book, it is just to the left of Ezekiel's right knee. So trying to look at where we're placing that, this bit of rope is in the way. So I made the decision to actually chop this rope off. and I've done it as high as possible so that you can't really see where the cut is. I'll just take a second to neaten that up as well. Once that's nice and neat, the little book from the upgrade sprue can be glued into place. It's got a loop at the top of it, so positioning that so it kind of hangs off the rope that's still there and it looks right. It's in roughly the right place. I'm quite happy with that. Next is the large book on Ezekiel's waist. This is the book from the Phobos librarian. I'm literally just gluing it on so it looks about right. Later on, after this is dried, I did chop the little book marker out. It was just a bit too much and it could have been crowded. So here's the Inner Circle sword and the Phobos librarian sword. I'm going to chop the fourth sword off just below the crossguard. And I'm constantly kind of checking this against the sword that we're gluing it to, trying to work out an appropriate place to actually glue these two swords together. And eventually I take off the blade for the Inner Circle sword, and kind of as I keep looking at it, I realize I need to take a little bit more off and a little bit more off. And eventually, this is the stage that we kind of come to. For a connection like this, we need something a bit more substantial than plastic glue, so I'm going to pin the two pieces together. Honestly, it's a miracle that I managed to do this without having the drill kind of burst through the plastic on the surface somewhere, but I managed to drill into both pieces pretty much perfectly. I'm just getting a little pin, putting on some glue, and chopping down the pin as needed, making sure that the blade actually fits neatly on without the pin preventing the two pieces of plastic from meeting each other properly and fusing with the glue. So there is the finished sword and roughly what it would look like on the body. Next, I'm going to glue on this little hip plate. I just completely forgot to do it earlier on, so that's now on there. It fits with the book, it doesn't get in the way, and we're kind of just inspecting the head. So getting into the head, I decided I would take my craft knife and I would just very bit at a time, very carefully shave the chin and the nose and some of the cheeks out of the face. This, I cannot stress how careful you need to be. First of all, not to damage the plastic, but second of all, of course, not to cut yourself. If you do anything like this, just be super careful and get an adult to help you. I've taken this blade guard head, as you've seen. I chopped off the back, I've chopped off the top, I chopped off the bottom until we're left with literally just the kind of the front visor. And this was a tedious process, just making it neat and using a very small file to kind of get it the right shape to fit to Ezekiel's face. I'm not only filing out the back of the sort of visor, I'm also filing out the two kind of top bits that lead to the point at the bridge of his nose, just so that all of it ends up being the right shape. Eventually, when it's close enough to being done, I put just a tiny bit of glue on the face, a tiny bit of glue on the back of the visor. This helps melt the plastic so you can kind of push them a little bit deeper into each other. I had a few bits of sort of soft plastic that I had to chop out and pull off, but we got there. I'm really happy with the face. So here you can see the little horn skull from the Phobos Librarian. I've taken that, I've cast it in blue stuff. I essentially want to create 2 more of those little skulls out of green stuff. And so I'm casting it in blue stuff. These are going to go on the vambraces. I've since seen a couple of people do, it's almost exactly the same conversion as me. They've just thought about it properly, and they've used the Primaris Librarian and just taken his vambraces because it's already got the skulls on there. They've just used that. I would love to say that I was just trying to be a bit thrifty and save on the amount of spare bits I was going to be stuck with at the end of this, but truth be told, it just didn't really occur to me to use those. So I'm shaving the little swords off the vambraces, making space for my green stuff skulls once they're ready. And yeah, that's basically that whole process. So in preparation for what's next, I've glued the head into place. And a bit of footage has gone missing, but I started making these pipes with a green stuff roller, super gluing one end where I needed it to be. That dries quite quickly, or at least starts to cure very quickly. It allows me to then bend the green stuff into position because it's got that contact point. So here is the second one. You can see I kind of try and chop a straight edge into the pipe and super glue it onto the model where I want it to be. We've already got one coming out of the faceplate. This one's coming out the side of his skull, the side of his hood. And it's just a lot of very careful manipulation of where I want this pipe to go before I just leave it to its own devices and let it cure. And once that's in position, just a dab, like a tiny dab of super glue on the other end to just connect it and make sure it stays where I want it to be. Going through the exact same process. You can see I've tried this multiple times because it just doesn't roll out far enough or thin enough sometimes. Just stick at it until you're happy. This pipe is nice and long. This is the one that comes from Ezekiel's sword to somewhere on his person, presumably because he can send psychic force down that pipe and activate the force weapon that way. So we're just bringing that over the hand as on the original model and kind of under his arm, round his back. And once all the green stuff piping is done, this is how he looks. Got 3 on the head and face and 1 from the sword. You'll also notice that off camera I've glued on the keys from the other Inner Circle companion, and I've taken this little bit of chain from the Black Templar upgrade sprue and just used it to replace the rope that was hanging from his hip. His original model has chain. I found this, it was the perfect fit. I decided I would also use chain. And then the horn skull that was originally from the Phobos Librarian that we've casted here for the vambraces, I've glued that on top of the keys. Because again, I want this model to be as accurate as possible to the original. So here I'm just, again, another very fiddly job, and something that I definitely could have done better if I'd committed more time, or like I said before, if I'd used the Librarian vambraces, this might have gone better. But overall, I'm pretty happy. I sculpted these with green stuff, cast them with the blue stuff. They came out pretty well. Getting them to be the right size and chopping off all of the excess was a really tough job. So on reflection, yes, it could have been neater, and I have seen other people do it a bit more successfully. However, I am not unhappy with how it's gone. I think that they do look good, and once we have painted them up, you're barely going to be able to know, you're barely going to be able to tell. So using my craft knife to just help me position these bits of green stuff, I'm super gluing them onto the fan braces and making sure that they go on nicely where they want to be, because super glue cures fast. It cures fast, so I'm just making sure that I press on and get enough contact that these are going to stay on. Onto the back banner now. So initially we're going to neaten this up, and we're going to take the Dark Angel symbol off the top of the back banner. Having a little look at the Grey Knight book and neatening it up, I decided that I'm going to basically have it as close to the original as possible, so this won't sit on top of the actual banner. We're going to chop off this sort of section of pole that would attach to the back banner, and we're going to have this sit flush like on the original. So you can see, maybe you can't see, yep, we're off camera because I was paying too much attention. I've cut down into the pole and then cut across from behind to essentially create a right angle, leaving the sword point still pointing down, and I'm just shortening that sword point as well, because otherwise it's not going to fit into the available space. So this is all about creating points of contact for this piece to glue onto the other piece. And again, we're just trying to see if it fits. It's still a little bit too long, so I make that sword point a little bit more stubby, but still nice and pointy. Neaten up the actual back banner itself, and there should be loads of surface area to get this glued nicely to the back banner and create one whole piece that looks like a coherent back banner to me. We just make sure that it's nice and neat, and then of course we're going to be moving on again to pinning this to the backpack, because otherwise I don't think it's going to work. I also used this rounded file because the backpack itself is round and the bottom of the back banner is flat. I wanted them to fit as seamlessly as possible, so the file really helped there. Something I didn't film was also casting the Primaris Librarian's shoulder pad with the larger horned skull. This was something that I had on a different model and wasn't able to actually use in my own kitbash, but I cast it in blue stuff and made myself a slightly bigger horned skull to go on Ezekiel's right shoulder pad. And after kind of putting everything together, we're finally here. It's time for the reveal. Now, obviously, he's not painted yet. It does feel a little bit cheap not to paint him up for you, but it's really, really important to me that I get this right. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's an opportunity for me to get 4 videos out of a single model, so I'm not gonna say no. Tune in next week if you want to see me basing this guy. Tune in the week after if you want to see me fully painting this guy. And I will let you know the week after that how we got on at the painting competition. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you're not subscribed to the channel and you fancy helping me out, hit that subscribe button. It really does make a difference. Thank you so much as always for your time, and I appreciate you watching to the end. Take care, and I'll see you next week.